Hello BookTube. This is another selection from Before the Muses by Benjamin R. Foster. Today I'm talking about the Marduk prophecy. Now, the Marduk prophecy is a short little text, as most of the texts are in this collection. This is the introduction here. The actual text is only about 2.5 pages long. But the historical background to it is a little bit more complicated. I've done my best to research this, so hopefully I'll get all my facts right. Let me start at the beginning. I first heard about the Marduk prophecy in this book, Assyria by Eckhart Fram. And in this book, on page 73, he mentions that the Assyrian king, Tukulti-Ninurta, sacked the city of Babylon and took away its god, Marduk. Now, Tukulti-Ninurta is somebody else who's popped up in Before the Muses. The Tukulti-Ninurta epic was also in this collection, and I did a separate video on that, which I'll link to in the description down below. But yes, Tukulti-Ninurta, the Assyrian king, sacked the city of Babylon and carried away its god. They had an idol of the god Marduk, and the Assyrian king took it away. And he mentions in this book that this act of god-napping was quite a traumatic event for the ancient peoples. It apparently happened from time to time. Of course, if you grew up in Sunday school, you immediately think maybe of the story where the Philistines captured the Ark of the Old Covenant in the Old Testament. Perhaps that's another example of God-napping. But anyways, apparently it happened from time to time, but it was a traumatic event for the peoples of the ancient world because they believed that all their future and fortunes of their city was tied up in their god. Now, in this book, again on page 73, Eckhart Fram mentions that there is a later document called the Marduk prophecy, which narrates the Marduk's travels from the perspective of Marduk himself. And in this perspective, it's Marduk himself who decides he wants to travel. So it's not that the Assyrians are forcefully carrying away the Babylonian god, it's that Marduk himself decides he wants to do a little bit of traveling, and so this is all of Marduk's own free will. And I read that and I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. I'd like to track down that someday. And then, yeah, here it is. The Marduk prophecy is in this collection. Again, just 2.5 pages long, but I have read it now. Also, there's not a Wikipedia article. There's a article from World History Encyclopedia on the Marduk prophecy, which I've also read as background for this. I'll link to it in the description down below. I'm also reliant on the introduction here that Benjamin R. Foster gives in Before the Muses. Wikipedia does not actually have an article dedicated solely to the Marduk prophecy, at least not at this time. But it does have an article on the type of text which the Marduk prophecy is part of, which it calls, I believe it's pronounced Vaticinium ex eventu, a Latin phrase which means prophecy after the event. So this refers to the type of prophetic texts where the authors take a recent event and then find a historical figure to prophesy about that historical event to make it look as if that historical figure had prophetic insight, even though they're rewriting history to go back and put the prophecy into the mouth of an older figure after the event has already happened. Wikipedia, of course, mentions the biblical book of Daniel as an example. Now, this is maybe a little bit controversial because if you're a Christian, you believe that Daniel really did prophesy prophesies these events. But I think scholars believe that the writer was writing at a later time period and put those events back into the mouth of Daniel, rather than Daniel actually prophesizing them. But yeah, anyways, the Daniel's an example. The other examples mentioned from ancient history are the Shulgi prophecy, which apparently was written about the same time as the Marduk prophecy, and is in this collection as well, and the Marduk prophecy. So it looks like the history behind this. I mentioned earlier that Tukulti-Ninurta had captured Marduk, but it looks like the history behind this is originally the Hittites had defeated Babylon and captured Marduk. So Marduk's first journey was to the land of the Hittites. It's referred here to as, I believe, Hatti. Hatti is one of the Hittite cities. And then at some point it looks like the Babylonians get Marduk back. According to the World History Encyclopedia, it's hypothesized that maybe Marduk came back peacefully as part of a trade agreement. We don't really know. Then Assyria under Tukulti-Ninurta took Marduk from Babylon, and then Marduk was then in Assyria, which is referred here to, in this text is referred to as Batil, but the translator's introduction, it equates Batil with Assyria. And then again, according to the World History Encyclopedia, somehow Marduk ended up in the hands of the Elamite kingdom. So again, it's a little bit fuzzy here, but it looks like the Elamites attacked Assyria at some time and took Marduk from them. So this is written in the reign of Nebuchadnezzar the First. Now, according to, I don't remember where I read this, Wikipedia maybe, Nebuchadnezzar the First is not to be confused with the Nebuchadnezzar in the Bible. That is Nebuchadnezzar the Second. He's going to come later, so this is the same name, but it's not the guy from the Bible. This is Nebuchadnezzar the First. Anyways, Nebuchadnezzar the First was one of the great energetic kings of the old Babylonian period. And he defeated the Elamites and took Marduk back to Babylon. Interestingly enough, according to the World History Encyclopedia, Marduk was again taken from Babylon by Sennacherib of Assyria. And Sennacherib, of course, you know from your Bible, right? Sennacherib is the one who laid siege to Jerusalem during the reign of King Hezekiah. So he apparently sacked Babylon and took Marduk again with him. And if you remember your Bible, you remember that Sennacherib was killed by one of his sons, and that apparently was the curse, reputed to have been the curse for having taken Marduk. But that's all later. That's from a later period. I just give that as extra interesting information. Anyways, in the Marduk prophecy, Marduk talks by addressing all the gods, Anu, Enlil, Nudimmud, Ea, the great gods of the pantheon. He actually starts the list with a couple of lesser known gods. And the footnote here says that the reason they did that, the author did that, is so that not to give primacy to the better known gods. Because Marduk was the god of Babylon, and Babylon wanted to always establish that Marduk was the most supreme of all the gods. And again, this was a theme that came through in the Babylonian creation myth, Enuma Elish, which I've talked about before on this channel. try and remember to leave a link to that in the description down below. Anyways, he addresses all the gods, and then he tells them how much he likes to travel. He says, "Now that I am ready for a journey, I will tell you my name." He talks about how he loves to inspect, go back and forth through the mountains, inspect the lands, constantly back and forth in the lands from sunrise to sunset am I. So it's established that Marduk likes to travel. So this is the theological justification for why he of his own volition is leaving Babylon. So he talks first about going to Hatti, which again apparently is the Hittite Empire, and how he likes it there, and he made it possible for the Babylonians to send commercial expeditions there. So Marduk goes to the Hittite Empire with the intent of establishing trade relations, which perhaps is one of the reasons why it's presumed that the Babylonians got Marduk back through peaceful trade negotiations. And then he goes to Batil, and apparently Batil means Assyria, and he blesses the land of Assyria and gives them the Tablet of Destinies, which I guess Tablet of Destinies has popped up before in a few of these Akkadian myths. I guess this is Mesopotamian tablet which determines everyone's fate or controls the universe. So, oddly enough, despite the fact that the Hittites and the Assyrians have both at points in the past sacked Babylon and carried away the god Marduk, they both get a favorable write-up in the Marduk prophecies. This must have been, this isn't clear actually from the secondary sources I read, but I'm just assuming that this must have been at a time when relationships between Babylon and the Hittite and Assyrian kingdom were good, because they both get very good write-ups. The Elamites, though, do not get a good write-up. So this is a time when relationships between Babylon and Elam are presumably bad. And is talking about how he went to the land of Elam Marduk says he went to the land of Elam to drive all the other gods out, and then to cause all these disasters in Elam. So I'll just quote from that part. "I caused gods of cattle and grain to go away to heaven. The goddess of fermentation sickened the land. The people's corpses choked the gates. Brother consumed brother. Comrade slew his comrade with a weapon. Free citizens spread out their hands to beg of the poor. Authority was restricted. Injustice afflicted the land. Rebellious kings diminished the land. Lions cut off travel. Dogs went mad and bit people. As many as they bit did not live but perished. I fulfilled my days. I fulfilled my years. And then I resolved to return to my city Babylon and to Urgasagila. Urgasagila is, I guess, his temple in Babylon. So up until now, it's all been in the past tense, at least in the English translation. I'm not sure what the original Akkadian, if there would be any difference in the grammar. But assuming there's not, it's all in the past tense up until here. Then he switches into the future tense. So this is the prophetic mode. So he predicts that a king of Babylon will arise, will renew the marvelous temple. He will come in and lead me back into Babylon. Predicts the defeat of the Elamites. And then once he gets back into Babylon, he predicts a sort of a new golden age. So quoting from that part. The watercourses will bring fish. Field and acreage will be full of yield. The winter crop will last till the summer harvest. The summer crop till the winter. The harvest of the land will be bountiful. Market prices will be favorable. Wicked deeds will be rectified. Obscurities will be cleared up. Wicked deeds will be brought to light. Clouds will always be visible, which is a strange thing to say, but then the footnote here says that's actually a favorable prognosis for some reason. Brothers will have consideration for brother. Son will revere father like a god, etc. here. Finally, I and all the gods will, being reconciled with him. This is the great Babylonian king that they're writing about. And again, doesn't say him by name, but this is all propaganda for Nebuchadnezzar the First. Being reconciled with him, he will smash Elam, he will smash its cities, he will dismantle its fortresses, etc. And then at the end, it leaves instructions for how the cult centers are to worship Marduk. So the text is a little bit, lots of gaps in it here, but something about 40 quarts of something, another 40 quarts of something, 10 quarts of flour, 1 quart of something, 1 quart of honey, etc. And the translator's introduction says that if the intended effect of this text was to establish the cultic rituals at the temple, then that apparently had its desired effect, because at least 3 of the manuscripts that we have of the Marduk prophecy, apparently we have more than one surviving manuscript of it, were found more than half a millennium later than the time of Nebuchadnezzar the First. So, what's half a millennium? 500 years, huh? 500 years after the time of Nebuchadnezzar the First, after this was written, I guess these texts were still being circulated, giving the instructions for the cultic worship of Babylon. Sorry, cultic worship of Marduk. Ugh. So, hopefully that made a little bit of sense. I will link to everything I mentioned in the description down below if you want to look up these sources yourself. That is the Marduk prophecy from before the Muses. Thank you very much, BookTube. I will see you next time.